just go ahead and tell me what is the challenge that you're facing and how can I help you?
Oh, okay. I am stuck.
Okay.
Like, I feel like I am in quicksand, and every time I try to move, I sink. Um, and I've been on the personal growth or development for years. I've read like all these self-help books, I've done programs, but I still feel like I'm 44 now, and I feel like life has passed me by. I feel like I'm in a job pays the bills. It's not fulfilling. I thought that I'd be in a, relationship, have a husband, have kids by now, but don't. I, the, the relationship with myself is not where I'd like it to be. And I also uh, I'm in the worst shape that I've ever been in my life. And I look at myself in the mirror and I'm just like, okay, those 30 pounds, where did they come from? Oh, yeah, that's right. You made all these choices of eating bad food, right? And so I just feel like I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know. Well, I do know where to start, but at the same time, I don't. I feel like I don't know where to start. So I just feel like, yeah, I don't know where to go from here because I read all the books, because I've done all of that stuff. I'm just like, but I'm still here.
Mm. Okay. Thank you for sharing all of that. And what I got is that you're in a job that's not fulfilling, but it pays the bills. That you're in the worst shape
Mhm.
of your life and you have put on an extra 30 pounds. That you are not where you thought you would be in your personal life because at the age of
Mhm.
44, you thought you'd be married and have 4 kids. And your relationship with yourself is also in the gutter. And on top of all of this, you have been somebody that has read all these self help books. You are interested in personal development, and yet you still
Mhm.
feel very stuck. Did I get it? Is there
Yes.
anything else?
You got it in a nutshell, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news?
Let's go for the bad news.
Okay. So the bad news is that you are going to have to push through the emotion and the resignation that has built up. That's the bad news. That your own story, that
Mhm.
you are not where you should be, that you made all these bad choices, that
Mhm.
none of the stuff that you do is actually going to result in the big changes that you want. The bad news is your own attitude and story and emotions are going to be the biggest obstacle in your way. Do you want to know the good news?
Yes. Let's get some good news on there.
Well, what happened? I saw your face kind of go like, oh, when I
Yeah.
said the bad news. So what was your reaction to the bad news?
Shoot. Like it's like I got to do this. It feels overwhelming. It feels like this is some work, some real work that I have to do. And it feels like daunting.
Why does it feel daunting?
So I feel like I have so much work to do. I feel like there's just this insurmountable mountain that is just unattainable. But then there's another part of me that's like, no, it's not. Like you can do this. You got this. But there's that part of me that's just like, Ricky, it's not going to happen for you.
And are you experiencing the life that you want to be living right now?
No. There's moments. There's moments, yeah. But the overall, no,
Okay.
no.
See, the thing is that the reason why the mountain feels insurmountable is because you've convinced yourself that it's too late. That's the only reason why it feels insurmountable. The work is the work. And the work that will change your life and get you in shape and help you find a fulfilling career and get your life force back and have you have a wonderful relationship with yourself. And when that happens, the right person walks in. The work you need to do is the same work everybody needs to do to have those things. It's the story that you're telling yourself that you're already fucked up and that it's too late and that it's going to require too much and it's not going to happen. That's the only reason why you haven't gotten started. If I could tell you that the best years of your life were ahead of you, would you do the work?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
The best years of your life, Ricky, are ahead of you.
You know what? There's a voice in my head right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that voice says, this is BS. And the best years of your life were before, like when you were 22, when you were in your 20s. That's what there's this recording back there that's saying that. And it's so frustrating. It's extremely frustrating because I want to believe it. I want to believe you when you tell me that my best years are ahead of me. And I have friends who tell me that the best years are ahead of me. It's like, why can't I believe that? Why can't I take what you're saying and actually truly hang on and believe it 100%? Because that's really what I want.
There's a number of
Because I got to
reasons.
believe it to achieve it, right?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons why. Number one, you've been telling yourself the other story for so long that it's not going to happen, that's become your belief. Number two, because that's been your story, that it's not going to happen, and you're sad about that, your actions in your day-to-day life, your routines, your rituals, your habits, they now match that story.
Mm.
And so you have started to align with a person who believes that the best days of her life are behind you, which is why you're not taking care of your health. It's why having a job that is slowly sucking your soul dry but paying the bills is enough. It's why you've kind of given up or lowered your standards when it comes to the kind of person that you want to attract. Your actions keep you stuck because your actions are the kind of actions that somebody who doesn't believe that the best days of their life are ahead of them are taking. And so the solution is to figure out what the day-to-day life looks like of a woman who believes that the best days of her life are ahead of her. And by God, she's going to act that way.
Mm.
And I also have a suspicion. I have a suspicion that something happened to you, either in your late 20s or in your 30s, that knocked you on your ass and knocked you off track, and you haven't recovered from it. Because it strikes me that you say, my 20s were the best time of my life. And so tell me about what was going on in your 20s that made you feel like it was the best time of your life. And then I want to know what the hell happened that changed it.
I feel like in my 20s, I was more confident. I was doing the things that I liked. I was What really happened? My dad died.
Okay. How old were you?
He died when I was 28. Um, yeah. And after that, there was some depression that happened and, um, some significant breakups that
Mm-hmm.
happened. And I feel like those were just like probably things that kind of crushed me.
Exactly.
And I just didn't really recover.
There you go. That's what happened. You experienced profound loss. And the loss of your father, followed by the breakup of a significant relationship, spun you around. And you have an opportunity to figure out, what does it look like for you in your life now to create that foundation that got ripped out from underneath you when you were in your late 20s. If I had to describe it, I would say that you went through a great loss and you have spent a decade grieving. And whether you realized it or not, and that in the past couple years, you've spent these past couple years kind of waking up from that and being disappointed with where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's okay. And one of the reasons why it's so easy, Ricky, to find yourself in a situation where you've read all the books, you listen to the podcasts, but you do nothing, is because I think you're stuck also in a kind of freeze trauma response in your body where things kind of stopped moving forward when your dad died. And you went into kind of this mode. I kind of had this vision of you almost like hunkered down, waiting for the next thing to happen. So, like, you go into this mode of not dreaming, not going for it like you used to in your 20s, but narrowing your focus to just getting through the day. And when you read all the books, you gain knowledge, right? That stays right up here. But what
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with is you're dealing with something that happened to you in your heart and your soul. Is any of this landing for you?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the strangest thing is that I've never really put that together. Like I never really connected that. Um, like I didn't really feel like I've been grieving over for 10 years. I felt like when people ask me like when I think about my dad passing away, I feel like I've grieved and I feel like I've moved forward and I feel like I'm okay with it. I didn't really connect my being stuck in my life to that.
So I think in some ways you gave up on your own
Mhm.
dreams. And then the breakup happened. And maybe were you with somebody that you thought you were going to marry?
I did. And it's weird because it's not just one relationship. It was like every relationship that I kind of got into afterwards, it was just like don't know. I can't even really explain it. But in my mind, I believed that more would come of it.
Mm.
And I'm embarrassed even like talking about this right now.
Why?
Um, why? Um, because you don't want to be that person that thought there was more and then there really wasn't. And I feel like that's what I have been. And yeah, that's why and it hurts. Um, yeah.
So, I can see why that would hurt. And I want you to consider looking at those relationships through a different lens because we're going to start working on the story that you're telling yourself. Because part of the relationship story is I'm a failure, I fall for people, and I think that it's going somewhere and they don't want me the way that I want them. I'm a failure. And I have a hunch, and again, we just met, but I have a hunch that if you were to look back on those string of relationships that didn't work after your father died, you were coping with your grief. You were not showing up healed, whole, confident you. You were showing up in those relationships with a hole that grief had created. And so when you get into a relationship and you get attached to somebody because they are filling a need that you have that you can't do in your own life,
Mhm.
that's when things get out of balance. And because you were grieving, and I get the sense from you because you strike me a little bit like me, that you thought you were fine. So we're going to move on and we're going to keep working and we're going to go forward with life. And now I'm going to meet this person and everything's okay because I don't want to scratch on that deeper thing that's really painful because I'm okay and I'm not, and I'm going to be tough. And yet you carry all that stuff with you. And I think that's what happened in your relationships. That you were so wanting to be, basically to disappear in a relationship and to feel safe again, that you fall very quickly and then you misread the room. And that's it. That's all that happened, again, because of the grief. And this is all very normal. And when you start to see that things aren't lining up the way that you expected, you start to feel bad about yourself and you start to wonder what's wrong with me. And there's nothing wrong with you. Nothing. And what you get to do now, Ricky, is we get to say today is day one of you reclaiming your happiness and taking your life back and healing what needs to be healed and defining for you what does a really fun and exciting life look like. And so I want to walk you through a super simple exercise, okay?
Okay.
I can see you processing. What emotions are coming up for you?
I don't want to cry
Why?
because I feel like if I cry right now, it'll be really ugly.
Great.
And it'll just be really sobby and
Great. What are the tears about?
letting go.
Mm-hmm.
I I am so used to, this might sound really crazy, but so used to feeling a certain way that imagining feeling differently feels almost uncomfortable.
What is the way that you're used to feeling? Let it come up.
That is not, doesn't matter how much I, that how much good comes into my life, like it will never be how I want it to be. Like I will never get to where all the things that I desire, they'll actually never, like, it'll come so close, but not for me. It happens to everyone else around me, but it
Mm-hmm.
won't happen for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it definitely won't if that's your belief, because you won't let it in.
Yeah.
And is this the way you want to experience life?
No, no, no.
And what would you have to change about the way that you live your life or the story that you tell yourself in order to have a different experience?
I would have to change that story. I would have to change that belief. I would have to
Yep.
do things differently.
Yes. You'd have to cry. And the tears are super important because in the on the topic of your dad, all the tears that you cry over somebody that has died, it's just the love that you didn't get to express while they were here. So it's a way to let love into your life. All the tears that you need to cry over disappointment that you're letting go, that's the baggage and the shame and the kind of beating yourself up that you've been doing for years. That's like a backpack that you drag around. It's a way to release that. You focus so much on holding it together and being strong and moving forward. And then at the same time, like mounting all this evidence for how things are not working, that you're not letting love and joy and connection in. You're protecting yourself from it and you're building a case against it. So many people do this. I did this for so many years too. And, I want you to think about something. Maybe this will help.
Mhm.
Because I can tell you what to do, Ricky. I can literally, and I will. I'll give you the domino that you need to tip first that will trigger a ton of other change. And if you just start chipping away at it, we can change absolutely everything. You can lose weight. You can start feeling like you're in your 20s again. You can change your job. You can get support and heal and really do the work to complete and feel present with your dad. You can forgive yourself for whatever you're doing, or you can forgive yourself for how you spent the last 14 years. You can do all that.
Mhm.
The doing is the easy part. But I want you to have a deeper experience in what you're saying to yourself. And you won't believe it in the beginning. But we got to figure out what you want to believe. And then we're going to list a series of rituals that you're going to do every day that are the actions that a person that believes that their life is amazing, that the best days of their life are ahead, that they deserve to be healthy and happy and vibrant and alive and in love. We got to start
Mhm.
aligning your day-to-day actions with the belief that you want to be driving your life. And so that part's easy. It really is, because it's just, here's the shit you need to do. Fucking do it. That's it. Like that's change. But there's a deeper breakthrough for you. And I would classify it as letting love in. And I have this visual that I use in my mind because I didn't realize how much I blocked love.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think about like your heart and your life as having a door, right? That separates you from the rest of the world. And for many, many years, the door between me and my heart and soul and the rest of the world was this like freaking mid-century steel thing that you would see on a castle that is impenetrable, right? Because I didn't trust people. I didn't love myself. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I saw all kinds of reasons why I'd fucked things up, why I was a bad person. And as I've done more and more work to be kinder to myself, to change the story about what I want to experience in life, I've started to convert that door. I did a renovation project. I got rid of that door and I put the kind of doors that you see into a kitchen in a restaurant, you know, that's got the tooth and they swing back and forth, because it allows me to be more present to when I'm letting love flow to other people. And more importantly, when I allow the love to flow back to me. Does that resonate at all with you?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'll tell you why it doesn't, and maybe you can help me with it, because maybe
Okay,
it
great.
does, and I'm not seeing it. So I am, and my heart is completely just open for everybody and anyone.
Okay.
Like, and when I say that, I'm just like, I'm that friend that's always there. I'm that sister or that person that's always there, holding space for everybody else, being the rock for everyone else, loving. And not because I don't want to, because I really do. I
Yep.
really do. And so I give so much love. And I do receive love. I think that I do, but maybe I don't. I don't know. I just, you're shaking your head like, no.
Rocks typically don't allow a lot of love in. And if you're spending a lot of your own energy beating yourself up and feeling disappointed and settling, that's going to block love that everybody has to give to you. No, 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 no. The best days of my life are not ahead. No, 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 no. No, I don't need help. No, I'm okay. No, you don't have to go with me there. No, I can handle this on my own. No, I don't look good in this dress. That's not true.
Okay. Yeah, I, I, I do that.
Me too. Or used to. So, what do you think changed when your dad died?
Um, I really don't know. I feel maybe I've always wanted to make him proud of me.
Mm.
Um, and when he died, I felt like I didn't get the chance to do that, and that I never will get the chance to do that. Even though he never said that, he never told me he wasn't proud of me. He actually told me before he passed that he was, but I guess I just didn't really believe it because I wasn't proud of me. And I just never got the chance to really, yeah, I never got the chance to really show him who I could have been, who I believed I could be.
Thank you for going there. That's what happened. You're the one who decided that was the expiration date on you doing and living and being who you want to be. And, you know, there's that term I've seen a lot of people talking about called quiet quitting. It's almost like you quietly quit on your own ambition and your own dreams. And so I want to reclaim that for you. Okay? Because what's your dad's name?
Joe.
Joe. Joe's still here.
Mm-hmm.
Joe's watching. Joe is proud of you. This isn't Joe's shit. This is your shit. And here's the great news. You do have your entire lifetime to make yourself proud. And Joe's watching. And so your first assignment for me is I want you to write a letter to Joe, your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to thank him for being so proud of you. And I want you to tell him that you miss him. And you still feel that he's here. And you thank him for being with you and guiding you. And that you are writing this because you wanted to make a promise to yourself and a promise to him that you are going to go and do some amazing things. In your lifetime. And is he buried somewhere?
Yes.
Is it close by?
Yeah.
I want you to go to his grave with the letter, and I want you to read it to him. Okay?
Yeah.
And one of the things I also want you to do is I want you to think back to your 20s. And I want you to think about the things that you were doing in your 20s before your dad died that you don't do now. What are those things?
Taking more risks.
Great.
I was pursuing some creative things.
Great.
And I don't do that anymore.
Okay, great. So creativity. Because what you're going to put in your letter is, and Dad, one of the things that I promised to you and to me that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back, what is the creative stuff you used to do, Ricky?
Acting.
I used to act. And I'm going to sign up for an acting class. I'm going to start going to auditions again. I'm going to join the community theater. I'm going to try out for the summer stock program. Is there anything else that you used to do?
Singing.
I'm going to start singing.
Writing.
Again. Great. Writing. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. That's incredible. And the reason why this is so incredible is because a job change doesn't go deep enough to change what's actually blocking your life force and your happiness. And if I were to have started this conversation by going, hey, you know what you should do? You should just go act. You'd be like, what the fuck? No. But when you can connect it to the fact that there is this vibrancy, this self-expression, this flow and exchange. Because what's interesting about acting and singing, right, and writing, is it's not just you going out, it's the love that comes back in from
Mhm.
castmates and audience and musicians and all the people that are collaborating or witnessing that beautiful self-expression.
Mhm.
And so that is a perfect pathway for you to change the direction of your life by simply adding in the things that got lost when your life got turned upside down. And I think the act of writing that letter and going to your dad's grave and making a promise to him and to yourself that this is what you're going to put back into your life will be a way bigger deal and a way bigger motivator than any formula that I could ever give you. See,
Mhm.
the research shows that in order for somebody to achieve a goal, a dream, or make a change stick, there are two things that have to be present. You have to have the reason why you're doing it, and you've got to have the way or the how you're going to do it. And you're a smart cookie. You know how to audition. You know how to start singing again, whether it's in a church choir or with a group or whatever. You know how to act. You got the way all day long. You got to connect the why back to your dad and back to you giving yourself permission to be happy and to be proud of yourself. That's your why. And when you marry those two things with the step-by-step of just, oh, once a week I got to go to my singing group. Oh, once a week I got to audition for something. Oh, once a week we're done here.
Mhm.
Because if you give yourself permission to do that, it will open up so much momentum and energy that you'll change your job like that. You'll start exercising and taking care of yourself. But that's the missing piece.
Mhm. You know what I just thought of?
What?
It's just like popped into my head. Um, I used to really, really love working out, and it never felt like a chore. It was just something I loved to do, and I would be running. But when where I found out that my dad had passed away was when I just finished a workout, and I opened my locker and I checked my phone, and so I found out he passed away while I was at the gym. And after that, going to the gym, like, yes, I still went, but it never had the same momentum to it anymore. And I'm just connecting that right now.
That is a beautiful insight, a life-changing one.
Mhm.
Because do you remember what happened let's go back to that moment. You open up the locker, you reach
Mhm.
in and you grab your phone.
Mhm.
And how did you learn?
There was several messages
Okay.
from my sister that were there.
Okay.
And so I called back, and then she had said to me, let's, where I told her I was at the gym, and she's like, okay, well, just call me when you get home. And I was like, what's going on? Something in me knew that, because he had been in the hospital at the time, and something in me, I was just like, just tell me, just tell me, just tell me. And then she told me,
See,
and I
that,
remember.
yes, you remember because that's a traumatic event in your life.
Mhm.
And it got
Mhm.
married with something that you love to do.
Mhm.
So it makes perfect sense that it pulled the ease and the joy out of the thing that you used to love to do.
Mhm.
But now that you have that incredible self awareness, I would include that in the letter.
Yeah.
And I know you wouldn't have wanted it, and me to stop doing that, and I didn't either, and I just realized this, and I'm freeing myself of this, and I'm telling you I love you, and thank you for being proud of me, and I'm gonna start running again every day. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start living again.
The thing that I've noticed about people in my life or when I've been really stuck is that it becomes part of my identity.
Yeah.
And I argue to stay where I am. And so I would love to have you speak directly to somebody who may be really needing a breakthrough when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
Or a breakthrough when it comes to their career or their health. And if you're in your own head and the echo chamber and you're like, but it's hard, but I've dated all these people, but all my bosses are jerks. And you kind of have that story, right?
Yeah.
How do you get started in terms of like to even just get over yourself and the way you're standing in your own way?
Yeah, there's this really interesting paradox that when you are stuck, the thing you most want is kind of freedom. I just want to move. I want to like get unstuck.
Yes.
It turns out that constraining yourself and having very prescribed steps is really useful. So one process I use with people and with companies as well is a process called a friction audit. And a friction audit is a big part of the book.
Friction audit?
Friction audit.
What the heck is that?
A friction audit, when you audit, if you're an auditor and you go into the books of a company to audit the books, you're basically like saying, does this all make sense? Let me pour through each line of the books and make sure I understand it all. And a friction audit is an attempt to find the friction. So what is it that's slowing me down? What is it that's not making me move forward or that's stopping me from moving forward? There are 3 steps to a friction audit. The first one is to figure out where the friction is. And that takes a bit of doing sometimes. And even asking the question is a first very important step, because when you feel like you've just described, my bosses are jerks, things just aren't working for me, you're not being thoughtful about it. You just feel things.
Yes.
It feels bad. So the friction audit, basically the process says, figure out what the biggest sticking points are. They could be, every day there's a part of the day that I look forward to least. It makes my life least happy. It's the biggest, downward force on my well-being. That's a friction point. Or I'm trying to get from A to Z in my career, and I know that I can never get past C, because C in that particular step is a major friction point that I can never get past. It might be a particular boss I have to deal with. It might be an aspect of my job that I can't kind of refine and improve, whatever it is. If you do that process of introspecting and finding the friction point, you are much better positioned to make forward motion, because the next step is intervention. Is there a way that I can either weed out that friction point altogether or sand it down, smooth it down? And what that means is, for a lot of people, it means spending a bit of time, energy, and sometimes money and saying, this thing is such a big problem for me, it's such a thorn that I need a way to eradicate it, to remove it. And I'm going to throw resources at this problem, whatever resources I have. And so it depends on the context. But if you intervene and you remove that friction point, then you're much better placed to move forward. And the third stage is confirmation, is just making sure that you've actually done a good job.
I can share a personal story. So I was crazy stuck, probably, 2019, super stuck. And things were going fine. Like on the outside, my life looked great. Married, long time, kids. Like I finally had gotten to a point where we were making the money and it paid off our bills and, we can live our life. And I was happy in the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
But not. And I felt guilty that I felt stuck. Like I almost had this shame about the fact that I had a house, I had a marriage intact, I had my health, and yet I felt empty. And a dear friend of mine, Peter Sheehan, who I'm realizing just friction audited me, we were, I don't even remember where we were, but I was griping to him. And he's been a huge mentor and very close friend of mine. And he is a renowned business strategist. And he said, take out a piece of paper. And I said, okay, what the hell is this going to do? Because, of course, when you're stuck, you're kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Because you're in your emotion, right? And you don't know how to get out of that stage 1 in your emotion. And he said, I want you to write down absolutely everything about your life that creates friction. That was his exact word. And so I was like, what do you mean by friction? And he said that you just feel all this resistance and negative emotion to. You resent it. You're annoyed by it. You're frustrated. It's hard. And so I took out this piece of paper at him and it was like just vomiting on the page. I hate packing on a Sunday. I hate being away. I hate, and just the word hate. I hate how much I miss my kids when I'm traveling. I hate how much I'm working. I hate like it was just like, and the second that somebody gave me permission to write it down in that language, it just flooded out of me. It was as if the emotion of stuckness had a place to go.
Yeah.
And once it was on a piece of paper, he basically was like, everything on that list is now a project.
Yep.
You either need to remove it from your life and work, or you need to hire somebody or find somebody to do it, or you need to figure out how to do it without complaining about it. And that right there is the roadmap, Mel, because all those things that are causing friction are what are keeping you stuck, but you're not doing anything about it. And so then it became the next side of the page.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, these are things I can move. These are things I can't. So I got to change my attitude about it.
You accept it. You recognize there's not that much you can do, but you've put a label on it and you've said, you know what? Some things just suck and packing on a Sunday is just how it is. I got to pack on a Sunday or whatever. That stuff is all just there and it's in a box, and not everything in life is going to be wonderful, and I'm okay with that. I will say as well that when we think about how to improve life, you described a whole lot of positives. You had a lot of good things in your life as you were going through this process.
Yes.
We often think that the way to make life better is to do more good things. You know, throw in more fun stuff. I think there's some truth to that. More good things is only better. I think the real bang for your buck in life, if you want to make life better, is to take the lows, the friction points, the things that are hard and bad, and smooth them out or raise them up if you can. I think that's where we should spend our time and attention.
Why?
Because that's where, if you have a lot of good things, but you have a lot of things that are bad, that drag you down, they do a much worse job of dragging you down than the good things can do dragging you up. We are often as good as the worst stuff that's going on. And so if you feel like your life is a series of friction points, but you also on paper have all these other good things, the best thing you can do is not add more good things. It's to take your time and attention and deal with those friction points and often your money and other resources that you have. So that's what I would counsel people to generally do, is focus on bringing the lows up a little bit rather than always focusing on the next flashy vacation, the next expensive thing that I'm going to buy. Those things will help a little bit, but they're never going to help as much as lifting up the lows so that they're not quite as low.
You know, again, a personal story. I have been shocked by how much of an impact therapy with my husband. Like, so we were going through just a really terrible time probably 4.5 years ago. And we went into counseling, and holy cow, it was like a crypt creeper digging up the dead bodies everywhere, kind of awful, painful thing. But on the other side of it, I had no idea how incredible the relationship could be.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been had we not hit that really painful moment of feeling stuck and just in a standoff. But it is hard to take that step to face the friction. I guess that's what we did. We went and sat with a therapist and did a friction audit on each other and on the marriage, and it was awful.
Yeah.
But the dividends that it pays on your life when you go through something like that, it just creates tremendous meaning.
Yeah.
So do you think part of the issue with the reason why it's so easy to get stuck is that life just kind of is the same thing over and over again?
I think that's part of it. I think the other thing about being stuck, you just described it, is that when something is a friction point, the natural instinct is to turn away from it.
Yes.
It's to say, I'm going to focus on something else. You know, if you're having difficulties in your relationship, the natural thing is to say, well, let's just give it a bit of distance. You know, I got to do some other stuff. You know, you figure out other areas of your life that are more appealing, you throw your attention and time there. And that's a mistake, because those friction points, they kind of nag at you, they become traps. And unless you figure them out and actually deal with them, you're not going to be able to raise them up, and they can end up being problems for decades. And so I think that's a large part of it is that there's a kind of sameness and a repetition to life. And the repetition comes from ignoring those little things that are niggling, that are sort of pulling at your ankle, saying, hey, do you want to look at me? And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. There are some other things I'd rather do instead that are more fun and more appealing. And that's why a friction audit is so useful, because it forces you to pay attention to what's not working, which we generally as humans don't have the instinct to do.
No, in fact, we not only don't have the instinct to take a sober look at what's not working, we have the instinct to turn away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is an area where tons of people struggle. And when people write in and say, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do with my life.
The first thing is you limit the options. You don't take the indecisive to 31 movies. You take them where there's only a couple. You don't bring them to a smorgasbord buffet because they'll just stand there and go, oh my God, look at all the food. You go eat, okay? No, you limit the options for the indecisive. Do the math, as they say. There are pro and con lists, also not considered effective. But if you do this twist to pro and con lists, it works. You create the pros and con list, and don't just look at which one's longer. Look at within that list which items do you value? What's more important? The pro list may be short, all right, but it has things that you value more than the con. And this may sound odd, but take your time. All right. In other words, make an informed decision. Don't stall, ponder, pause, but produce. If you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. If you want to succeed, you've got to take that risk. And so what would you fail? So what? Okay? Okay.
What happens in your brain when you procrastinate?
Why are you going there? Okay? We just said it's learned. Why are you looking for the physiological explanation? Because first of all, we don't know.
Okay.
All right? And I don't mean to do that just because I'm a pompous butt. It's also the truth. Let's stop turning for the excuse that, there's a brain thing going on, and therefore that's why I procrastinate. If you're going to do that, then you're not going to change, and that's okay. I mean, you have a right to live in misery as one wants to.
I think it's incredibly encouraging that it's learned, because I agree with you. That means you can change it. And I also heard you loud and clear. Forget the time management crap. Based on the research, none of that stuff is going to work for you if this is something that you're chronically doing. And you also said very clearly, there is no short list, there is no quick fix, there is no top 10 tips when it comes to procrastination, because this is about the story you've told yourself, the habits that you've formed, and that you avoid, or seek pleasure instead of doing whatever the hell it is that you need to do. And it's become a habit. What's the link between perfectionism and procrastination?
There is a link, but they are separate concepts. It all goes down to that failure. You see, that perfectionistic person has to believe that I do well all the time. I've got to be perfect. It could be, as I said, others imposing this to me, society imposing this to me, or it could be I'm concerned about my failures. So again, it's multidimensional, all right? Procrastination is also concerned about the failure, and so I want to avoid it. Avoidance strategy that society says is okay. It all has to do with failure and that public image.
I think a lot about the person listening and the ache that you live with when you can't get out of your own fucking way. We're in 194 countries. Most of the people listening either can't afford the PhD cognitive behavioral therapy program that you're talking about. And so for a person who really is aching because they are in their own way, they see themselves sabotaging, what can somebody that doesn't have access to what you're talking about do in their own life after hearing this? What are the baby steps?
Start small. First of all, what you're doing is you're looking at the forest, and you're missing that the forest is made up of trees.
Okay.
There's that old expression, don't miss the forest because you're focused on the trees. That's not the procrastinator's problem. It's the other way around. Oh. They see the forest. Oh my God, this is a huge task. Holy cow, I can't get all of this done. And they forget that the forest is made up of trees. So listener, viewer, all right, it's made up of trees. And so what if you cut down one tree at a time? Oh, that's too much for you? Then let's give me 3 branches. You can't do 3 branches? I'll take a handful of leaves. Start small. Do something. And so what if you fail? So what? This is what cognitive therapists would ask you to do. What would be the worst scenario?
Let me give you some examples of things that people listening to
and you're
this show.
asking me to do the street corner therapy
No,
again.
No, I am not. You just told us to look at the trees. That is a concept. And I am on a mission to break down intellectual topics and research and conceptual ideas into tactical takeaways so that somebody knows what the hell you're talking about when you say,
you want the cures.
I don't want the cures. That's bullshit. What I want is I want just one step, because I see people writing in every day, listening to conversations between PhDs or people that are talking at a level that is all academic. But when you finish listening to this podcast, Dr. Ferrari, I don't want somebody to feel worse because they don't know what a tree means in their life. And so if somebody writes in and says, I procrastinate on working out, and it's chronic, like this is one thing that really bothers me, what would a tree be in that example?
Sure. I take exception. I'm known in 40 years of teaching to take the jargon and to make it the streetwise.
I think you do. I'm taking it a step further because I don't have a PhD. I don't think it is either.
That's what this is.
You don't need to get offended. That's not what I'm talking about.
Well,
I am the advocate for the person listening.
Absolutely. And so am I.
Who?
Okay. I would say that person is giving us that 80%. I'd ask the person first, is this the only thing? Is working out the only thing you procrastinate on? Do you procrastinate in other areas of your life? And if they start telling me, well, yeah, no, I do that. And yeah, that's true too. And I don't like to do that. Then I say, okay, now then you're moving from that procrastinator to procrastinating to the procrastinator state. And that's something different. And I understand that many of you can't afford a good professional to help you through that. I understand that. Don't look at it time management. That's one of I gave a number of takeaways, but I think one of them is don't think you just have to manage your time. That's not going to work for you. It's like dieting. You'll start in the beginning, but you'll give it up. The person with who doesn't exercise, can you make something you like to do? I said this before, something you like to do, reinforce that you'll exercise. I don't like working on a treadmill. So when I'm on the treadmill, I'm reading my prayers. I know it'll take me about a good 20 minutes to do that, and so I can get at least 20 minutes of exercise. Pair it with something you don't like to do. That would be my street corner answer to that one. Does that help?
I think it really helps. When you take that beautiful analogy of you can see the big picture, but you can't focus every day on one freaking tree. Is there something... And I hear all of the advice. The parrot was something that you enjoy. Break it down.
Yeah, it's all part of self-care. Show care to yourself. Listener, please. All right. You've got to make time. Take time for yourself. Now, the next day, do a little bit more. Make love a habit of the heart. Wow. Last week, I only spent 2 minutes on it. This week, I'm up to 7 minutes. Now, you could say, only 7 minutes. I say, wow, yahoo. That's 7 minutes more than you did before.
How do you know if you're making an excuse or you have a valid reason?
That is such a wonderful question. Why are you shopping now instead of later? And that was fascinating because I found 2 categories of these procrastinators, excuse makers. Some of them attributed to themselves. Well, I'm shopping now because I can't decide on gifts. I really don't like shopping. It's really unpleasant for me. So it's my fault, self-reasons. So people will give external excuses, not my fault, that cannot be verified, that cannot be judged by other people. So you say, how do you judge? And so therefore, these people will give us excuses that can't be judged by others to be true or false. So that's fascinating.
You know what I found fascinating about that? Is that when you said the excuse is aimed at you, it's my fault. That made my heart sink because when you always aim it at yourself, I would imagine that makes you feel even more stuck or more ashamed or more beaten down.
Yes. Make a change. Yes, you're absolutely right. The self-devaluing, the self-criticism, it can be paralyzing and demoralizing, and is just not right. People shouldn't be doing that. And it'll take you a while, but it can happen.
Lewis is going to save you the almost 13 years, was it? How long was it? 2 decades or whatever of pain that he put himself through to get to the wisdom and the greatness that he has unlocked in himself. Because I've known Lewis for 5 years. He is a different human being. A different human being than even just a year ago. And I think that it is possible, and Lewis will tell you this, to be a competitive motherfucker and to compete at the highest levels, which he does.
Yeah. I still like to win.
Hell yes.
But it's a win-win. You know,
Yes.
it's a different type of win.
And to be a calm, cool, and confident person because you have peace with yourself
Yeah.
as you are doing those things.
And even just to comment on what you said about paying bills, I don't think you can have financial peace unless you have inner peace. Because there's so many people that you know that have lots of money who are overly stressed.
Right.
And more money doesn't always solve every problem. It solves lots of problems, but
Yep.
it doesn't always solve the problem of accepting and loving yourself.
That's true. And I'm going to add something to that. Because both Lewis and I have been in moments of our life, and ironically, it was during 2007 and 2008, where neither one of us were able to buy groceries. We did not have any savings. We did not have any income. We were relying on other people to help us get through. And the stress that you feel when you cannot pay for your basic needs is a toxic level of stress that can consume you. But what I also want you to consider is the added stress and shame and mental beatdown that you add on top of that reality doesn't help you pay your bills either.
100%.
And so whether you are at a point where you've been wildly successful, but you're deeply unhappy, or you're at a point where you're having trouble paying your bills, cultivating a sense of peace inside yourself, an assuredness that you can rely on yourself, a steadiness so that the world around you does not trip you up emotionally, that is a superpower. That's part of this greatness mindset that you're talking about. And Lewis has been on this profound healing journey. And so I want to go there.
The game is healing.
The game is healing.
The game is healing in order to, create anything in my mind.
What does healing even mean, Lewis?
I used to feel a lot of pain in my chest or tightness in my throat or disturbance in my stomach. I used to feel like I couldn't sleep at night because I was up for an hour and a half, like ruminating or thinking and stressed. I used to be very reactive when my nervous system was triggered.
Yep.
I feel like that's the opposite of healing. Healing is learning how to overcome all those things so your nervous system is in peace when there's chaos around you. It doesn't mean I'm not going to feel triggered momentarily or feel like, oh, I don't like that, or react to a thing or feel disturbed. But it's learning how to recognize it much faster and from a place of integrating healing and lessons, be able to respond differently when there's a disturbance, as opposed to based on a wound. So most of my life, I was just reacting, responding based on wounds that I was unaware of. Or maybe I was aware of them, but I was just like, this is who I am. Don't mess with me.
Oh, how many of us have heard that?
Yeah, don't try to change me. Don't mess with me. Like, this is who I am. I'm fine.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with me. Like this, reaction. And
can you give people a sense that don't know? You've wrote about this extensively in your New York Times bestseller, The Mask of Masculinity. And you talk about this on your podcast, but can you give people a sense of some of the things that needed healing? So I'm going to just point out one of them. So being in a classroom where you cannot do cognitively because of a learning difference. You and I both have dyslexia. Yours seems to be probably more profound than mine.
Even reading my own words, I trip up sometimes because I still have to practice reading slowly and with a cadence.
So what was that like for me to pass the book to you?
I was even going to say it. I was like, this is I get to practice my insecurities all the time. I have to read on a teleprompter all the time. And I'm always like, just take a deep breath and know that I'm not going to be the best reader in the world. And that's okay. And so I just say, I accept myself when I stutter. I accept myself when I stumble. I accept myself when I have to redo a sentence over and over again because I wasn't able to see what's coming next, and it just didn't sound right. It probably takes me twice as long to read my audiobook as you do, right? But I used to hate myself for that and beat myself up, and now I accept and love myself. And when I do that, I notice I read a lot better, and I flow a lot better. And it's not perfect or anything, but I'm like, it's just I save a lot more time. I'm more relaxed, and as opposed to I used to beat myself up and be the biggest critic. Now I'm just a positive self coach in those moments. I'm just like, oh, you got this. It's okay. You'll
Can
do
we
it.
unpack that for a minute? Because I think it's a really relatable example. So every one of us has something that we're self-conscious about or that we beat ourselves up about, whether it's our weight or something about our skin or our hair or our height or, for you mentioned stuttering and stumbling and reading out loud or being slower at something. And you so beautifully talked about how you used to just beat the hell out of yourself. You hated that about yourself. How did you, Lewis, learn to accept something you hated? How do you fucking do that?
There's many different modalities of
What worked for you?
Of healing.
Right.
And I feel like over the last 10 years, I was telling your husband, Chris, about this. I was like, because he was asking me about all these different things.
Right.
And I was like, I feel like I've tried lots of different stuff because I got a lot of work to do. So I'm willing to dive in and like take a look in the mirror and say, tell me what to do, and I'll try it. And I did workshops, emotional intelligence, leadership training workshops 10 years ago that helped me unlock and open up about sexual trauma. That was kind of stage one. It was one of my biggest shames that I didn't want to talk about. I didn't want anyone to know about, because if anyone knew that I'd been sexually abused, I thought no one would ever love me. So it was a huge protection a shield that I was putting up on myself to show people that I was strong, to show people that I was confident, to show people that no one could mess with me in sports or whatever it might be. And that supported me in accomplishing certain results, but hurt me in feeling loved and harmony and alignment within myself. And so it was exhausting. It's draining. It's an emotional train wreck because you're kind of living a double life. Inside, you know the truth. Outside, others don't know the truth about you. So you're hiding something.
And, I want to point something out about this because we've been doing a whole series on trauma and nervous system repair. And you talked earlier about how your lived experience, even though you're super successful on the outside, is like knot in the stomach, tightness in the chest, something in the throat. You don't even have to be conscious about the fact that you're hiding this thing. It's not like you're walking around thinking about the fact that you were a victim of sexual abuse. It's that it's stored in your body. So your body operates in a state all the time as if something bad's about to happen.
I wasn't even like aware that I wasn't telling people. I was just like, trying to block it and cover it up constantly.
Yeah.
But it was always in my mind. Like maybe every few days, the memory would come up in some way. It was just like a movie that was repeating on repeat. And when I did this first workshop, a lot of things started to happen in my life where I was having breakdowns, intimate relationship, business partnership, just life. I just felt like, man, stuff is breaking down all around me. Although I'm successful, why are all these things breaking down? I'm the common denominator. A friend of mine was like, I actually got in a fight on a basketball court. This was kind of the tipping point where I was the perfect storm. And a friend of mine who was there was like, I don't want to hang out with you anymore if you're going to keep reacting in this way. Because I was the same fun-loving guy, but when I would get triggered, I was like, this reaction would come out of me.
Like you get like super physical, like a linebacker kind
I would
of
just
thing?
like try to defend myself energetically. But if someone was physically trying to attack me, which in a basketball game is kind of
Isn't that part of the game?
Yes, but I would take it so personally. So when there was a cheap elbow, I'd be like, turn around and be like, let's go, let's fight. So I didn't have the filter because I felt like someone was always trying to abuse me or take advantage of me.
Because they had.
Exactly. And so this was kind of the last thing that happened. I got in this fight and my friend was like, hey, I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to play basketball anymore with you if you're going to react like this. And it was a tendency that was happening for many months, more and more, until this like fist fight came about.
Fist fight?
Fist fight.
On a basketball court?
On a pickup basketball court. Yeah,
Lewis.
there was no stakes on the line. It was just like a friendly game in the mean streets of Beverly Hills. Yeah. And
How old were you?
I was 10 years ago. Yeah. it was
So how
10
old are
years
you
ago.
now?
I'm 39.
39. So
I was
when you're
29.
29 years old.
And I remember there was a police station right across the street. It was in West Hollywood. It was 10 minutes away from here. And I remember going home after this. Well, I remember seeing the guy's face when it was done and being really scared of what I'd done.
Meaning,
His face didn't look good. I'll just say that. And I always had this rule that I'll never hit someone unless they hit me first. That was kind of like my thing. But I'll freaking get in someone's face. I'll talk trash, whatever. But I was like, I'll never hit someone unless they hit me first. He ended up headbutting me because we were like kind of in each other's faces, and he headbutts me. And then I kind of just go blank.
Yeah.
And I turn into like the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
In that moment, like, this guy hit me. There's no rules. And afterwards, I had so much adrenaline because I don't think I'd gotten in an actual fight since I was like 13, right? So I played football to get my aggression out, but then I no longer was able to hit people legally, right? And so this was a point where this happened, and I remember going home and looking at myself in the mirror and being like, who are you? I did not recognize myself. And I was really kind of like shaking because I was like, what am I doing? Like, who am I? Why are you reacting? I always started to like ask myself this question. And I remember thinking like, I have too much to lose now to allow my anger, my fears, my wounds to be in control.
Yeah.
Because I had built a business, and I was like, what if someone had a knife or a gun or whatever, like, or I injured myself in a worse way, or I hurt someone else? Like, what if something really bad happened? He was ended up fine. We were fine. But I remember thinking, oh, okay, this could really get out of control. And this was nothing. This was like a little incident, and I was so reactive. So that's what got me down the path of saying, let me take a look in the mirror. I asked some friends for some suggestions on what I could do. I went to some workshops. The first workshop I went to got me to a vulnerable enough state to talk about sexual abuse for the first time.
Out loud?
Out loud. First time I spoke the words.
What was that like?
The most terrifying moment of my life, to be honest, because I never thought that this had happened to any other man. So you have to imagine, if you think that what has happened to you has never happened to anyone else, then you think you are wrong, broken, and the worst human being alive.
Yeah.
Now, was my interpretation, right? And I got to a place during this workshop where it was a 5-day experience, and a lot of people were going through it was a leadership workshop, but we have to go into our past and mend things to get clear on what we want for the future and then move towards the future, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a process, a journey of your personal life to help you have more tools of leadership.
Yeah.
And at one point during this workshop, people were open up about different stuff. It was a vulnerable state at this time, but it was like after the 3rd day. The trainer goes, okay, we've gone into these different past experiences, parents and this and that and breakups. We're not talking about the past anymore. We're moving on. We're going into what you want to create for the future. Like, we're done. We're moving forward. But if there's anything you haven't shared, now is the time. Like, if there's anything you haven't shared from the past, now is the time, or we're moving on and you're going to miss your moment. For whatever reason, that voice came back out and was like, okay. And during this time, I started to address all these different things from my childhood. My parents, they probably should have never been married in the first place, but they went through a divorce eventually, and just kind of the fear of their arguments and fights as a young child. That was stressful. My brother went to prison when I was 8 for 4.5 years. So I didn't have friends for 4.5 years because in a small town, the moms wouldn't let their kids hang out with me. So there was just a lonely time, and it was traumatic to go to a prison every weekend and watch your brother in a room full of convicts and their families. It was a traumatic experience for the whole family. Being picked on in school and special needs classes and all these different things, breakups, heartbreak. I was like, okay, I've already addressed this stuff. I feel fine here. But what about this thing that I've been thinking about almost every day for 25 years? And whatever inside of me just said, you have to stand up. And I remember just like standing up and getting out of my seat and walking to the front of the room. And there's probably, 30, 40 people in the room. We're kind of like in a semicircle, and I stand up. And this was interesting because I couldn't look anyone in the eyes. I stood up, I looked down at the carpet, went in front of the room, and just said, when I was 5, I was sexually abused by the babysitter's son. And I went through the entire story of the entire event. It was almost like I was in the bathroom again, reliving it. And I shared this, but I could not look up because I was so ashamed of what I was saying. And I was just thinking to myself, man, everyone's laughing at me. Everyone's like, you know, thinking I'm a loser. Everyone thinking I'm unlovable. All these things came up for me. And I was like, my life is over. Essentially what I was thinking. And I remember sharing this, staring down, like walk through the whole thing. And somehow I was like semi-calm. I was like standing there just maybe because I wasn't looking in anyone's eyes, but I was pretty calm and able to just get through it. I wasn't crying or anything. I was just getting through it. And then I went and sat down, and there was two women sitting on either side of me when I sat down. And I remember just looking at one of them, and she's like weeping, and the other one is like holding me. They're crying. Now it's like 25 years of pain just kind of erupts, and I start crying, and they're holding me. They're all kind of like jumping and shaking, like, you know, they're crying uncontrollably. And I'm just like, I have to leave. So I run out of the room. It was in kind of a conference room of like a hotel. Run out of the hotel to get some fresh air. And I'm in the back alley behind this hotel by LAX. And there's a wall. I kind of just put my hand against the wall and I'm just like sobbing. And a few minutes later, I feel a touch on the back of my shoulder. And it's this guy who's bigger than me. He's probably in his late 50s. And he turns me around. He's crying. He looks me in my eyes. He says, "You're my hero. You're my hero. I will follow you anywhere." I vividly remember this. He goes, "I have 3 kids. I've been married for 20-something years. My wife doesn't know. My kids don't know. This happened to me when I was 11. This happened to me multiple times. And I've lived with shame and doubt and insecurities my whole life. Thank you for being the first person to open up in front of me. You're going to give me the courage now to go and tell my wife."
Wow.
All these men from the room started coming out. There was only 2 or 3 guys who had been sexually abused that told me that for the first time, by the way. They hadn't opened up either to anyone in their lives. And then other guys were just like, "I've never heard anything like this. This happened to me. I feel really insecure about this in my life, or this thing I'm ashamed of," right?
Right.
And it was so powerful because I was thinking everyone's going to make fun of me, but in fact, it made them trust me and respect me more and love me more. The thing that was the scariest thing for me was actually the thing that brought me closer to people. And people could actually see me for the first time fully, at least in that regard. And that was the start of 10 years of lots of different healing modalities, which I'm happy to talk about some of them, but that was the start of processing the healing. The next step is integrating the healing, which is where all the work is.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we will get you back to go in and talk about all the modalities, but I want to just say that this is yet another one of those areas where you and I have a parallel path. Because I had a very similar thing happen to me when I was in the 4th grade, and I buried it. And I knew in the back of my mind, somewhere in the back of my mind, that something had happened. And it wasn't until I was at a leadership seminar.
Really?
That was in the
That you started to open
personal.
up.
No, well, what happened is somebody else shared. And they shared about how they had been molested and they had forgiven their parents and forgiven the babysitter. But they couldn't forgive their sister because while this was happening to them in the bathroom, similar to their story, their sister was watching TV.
Oh,
And as she said that, I had a very vivid memory of the moment that it happened to me in the middle of the night. And when I kind of rolled over because I, was scared that this person was on top of me, the first person I saw was my brother because he was sleeping on the bunk bed, like right across. And I thought, I don't want this person to hurt him. So I was just like quiet like a mouse. But it was the sibling connection. And it, like you, just flooded in.
Wow.
And I was like, I got to share this. And for a minute, I questioned whether or not it had happened. And it was
it a bad dream, or was it a reality,
Yes.
or did I block it? Was it real? Yeah.
Yes, but that voice, that knowing, that flood of emotion made me, like you, say, I just have to say it out loud.
And what happened when you said it out loud?
Oh, I just collapsed.
sobbing. Same thing as you. Like so many people come up. I mean, it is such, unfortunately, a very common story. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men have experienced something like that. But it's in the either the denying that it's real and questioning it, or the shame that you feel around it as if somehow it's your fault, or it somehow is damaging to you, and carrying that inside, which really is damaging. And so I think that it's an important, thank you, first of all, for sharing that story.
Yeah, of course.
And I think speaking the things that you hate or are ashamed of is a form of acceptance. Because if you keep this stuff silent, if you're unwilling to talk about it, it's going to continue to haunt you. For anybody that is just experiencing anxiety or you just feel really stuck, how do you begin this process?
So most of the time, people come to me and they don't know they're avoiding. They have no clue they're avoiding. So the first step is really pausing. Give yourself 5 minutes. Sit down and think about the things that you want to do. So let's think about the dream life. What are the things you want to do? And then ask yourself why you're not doing it. What are the things that are getting in the way? And you're going to pretty quickly identify your avoidance. I'm not doing this because I'm afraid of heights. I'm not doing this because if I ask for a raise, they're going to find out that I'm not good enough. I'm not going on this date because I don't think I'm pretty enough, right? And so if you pause, think of your dream life, and then ask yourself, what are the obstacles here? You're going to identify the avoidance. That's the first step to changing.
Wow. And what if somebody goes, I don't really know?
So one way to do this is look at the mirrors in your life, your good friends. You might not want to call your avoidance, but your friends usually know when you're avoiding. My husband calls me out on it all the time. The other day I was on a plane, I got an email that I hated. I took a picture, sent it to him, and the text goes, do not respond. That's reacting. That's avoidance. You cannot do this, Luana. And I had composed the email back, by the way. I was about to send the email. Your family and friends, your loved one, your close friends, they are good mirrors for us. They make us better, especially those friends that can call you on your shit. Look at them and have a conversation about avoidance. I bet they can help you.
Amazing. What about people that have, what about parents or loved ones that have somebody that struggles with anxiety and a lot of avoidance? How do you support somebody?
So supporting somebody, especially in heightened anxiety, can be very challenging. I just had a client of mine say that he's at the end of his wife. Like, she won't get on a plane. She will not do anything that is physically active because increase. So they want to go on this beautiful vacation, but she's like, well, it has to be an electrical bike, and it has to be snorkeling, not scuba diving. Like, she's basically containing anything that's related. So he said to me, I'm done with this, right? The first piece is really trying to, number one, get the person some help if they are in that level of distress. But the second one is asking how you can be helpful. Okay? Because often we want to help people, but we want to help them in the way that we know to help. So the example of Oakley, and you're saying to him, like, just get over this. Because that works for you, Mel. Like, that works for you.
Sometimes.
But it seems like a strategy that you can muscle through, right? And so it's in the case of Oakley, it's like, what would be helpful? This is one piece. Like, what would be helpful for you right now? How can I support you? 2, if it is avoidance that person is sort of talking about, listen, I want to be helpful, but I'm not going to help you avoid. And that's important for parents. If your kid is terrifying going to school, keeping them at home is just adding to the avoidance. So how do I support my kid getting to school? I'm going to go with you onto the parking lot. We're going to go early, and I'm going to walk you to your classroom. I'm going to actually help you by staying with you a day at school, right? Parents tend to try to take their kids away. That's a parent level avoidance, and it's making your kids sick. So you need to find a way to approach with your kid at their level.
I made this mistake when our kids, Kendall and Oak in particular, had pretty significant episodes of anxiety. There was a 6-month period where each one of them slept on the floor of our bedroom. And I was so tired, that was my excuse, that I would just let them sleep there. They'd wander down in the middle of the night. I wouldn't want to have to get out of bed and walk them back up and deal with the pushback and deal with the emotions. And so I would let them stay there. And then it morphed into me just making a little bed on the ground on my side of the bed. And the funny thing is they were smart enough to know, even when they were sleepwalking, that they don't go to Chris's side of the bed because he would get up. They just come to mine. And I could almost, in the middle of my sleep, sense that they were there. And I would just lift up the blanket in the middle of the night. And it lasted for 6 months. I made it worse.
Yeah. And you're not alone, Mel. I've heard this from so many mothers before because, see, you're exhausted already, right? This is why I talk a lot about we need to learn to regulate ourselves and use those approaches for ourselves first so that we can be the best parents. Because if you're already on the negative, you did what you needed to do to survive, right? And I bet there's a lot of mothers listening to us who are doing similar things because they feel like they don't have anything on their gas, any gas on their tank, so they have to do this. And the thing is, it does make it worse. That's the only problem. And it makes it worse for you and the kid because we are teaching the opposite we want to teach the kid, right? And it is hard. Like my 5-year-old now has this thing with dogs. And I'm like, what I really want to say is, you're not afraid of dogs. Go talk. What I do is, okay, can we just stay far enough from the dog? Can you look at the dog? Can we? And, we had this conversation yesterday. I heard you had dogs. And I said, so if you meet her, she has dogs. But what am I going to do? And I said, we're going to stay there and we're going to learn about her dogs. But do I have to touch? No, you don't have to touch. But you have to show up and you have to be there because and there's this instinct as a mother. One day I saw myself wanting to cross the street because Diego is a big dog and I got a little uncomfortable. But I was like, I'll hold your hand and we're just going to wait. We're going to pause and we're going to let the dog go by. I'm not going to go towards the dog either. I could see the fear. But as a mom, I wanted to protect him. I wanted to take him out of there.
Yeah.
It is not what we want to do.
What about the sleeping example? What would you counsel a patient to do if they were in that cycle where a child's coming down, wanting to climb into bed? What do you do?
My husband did the sleep training at our house because I was like, I don't want to hear kids screaming. And so I'm sharing this as a mother because I remember Diego screaming for 2 or 3 days and now he sleeps really well. And so I'm very thankful to David. But what you want to do with sleep and any kind of things that are containment, right? Kids function better if they have a sense of safety and they know what to protect. And so you have that conversation that this is your bed and that's where you sleep. And you cannot have any sleep ups. So if the kid comes the first night and you're exhausted, you take them to their bed and you might have to take them to their bed 10 times that night and 10 times the next night. But the first day that you let them sleep there, even for 10 seconds, you're basically telling them that they can push the boundaries. Kids are learning by our modeling.
It's true.
And once they learn it, kids are so good. They're going to push a little more. They're going to push a little more. And we then start giving a little more. And so in situations like this, it has to be 0 tolerance. No, you don't come here. No, you don't come here.
You're right.
And pretty quickly, to tell you the truth is if you do that, you extinguish the behavior.
It's true because they're uncomfortable being alone in their bed. And so you're teaching them to tolerate that discomfort.
That's a skill they need to learn for the rest of their life because they're going to have to do, it's called emotion regulation psychology. And you're teaching them basic emotion regulation by teaching them that it's okay to have that discomfort and that they're safe in their bed. And over time, it goes away.
And that's what we need to teach ourselves.
That's exactly what
because all of this avoidance is simply us not being able to tolerate as adults our own uncomfortable emotions.
That is all there is. We get uncomfortable when we run like we're a kid. We go run into our parents' room and now we're stuck in a cycle.
Yeah. But instead of running to mom and dad's room, we're running to the vodka bottle or we're avoiding the email or we're holding on to the application because that's a way to avoid the risk or the pain or the fear that we have.
And we're just building more pain, more fear, and more discomfort.
This is so fascinating. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.